Did you see Sound of Freedom?
I haven't.
You haven't seen it?
No, and it has nothing to do with the boycott, it's right-wing propaganda. It has nothing to do with that. I didn't know about it. That's the honest to God answer. Like,
it's because they don't want you to know about it, man.
Okay, what? I don't even know that much about it. So I know it's a movie that is. Correct me if I'm wrong here. The gist of it is that it's like special agents or like a special task force that's been created to stop child trafficking, right?
It's about a guy that's based on a true story.
Okay.
About this guy who's tracking down these kids that went missing.
Okay.
And the government or the police he was working for, FBI or Homeland Security, I think, said, hey, we can't find these kids. We're basically cutting the budget. You're coming home and we're done.
Okay.
And he says, no, we're not. I'm quitting my job and I'm spending my own money to find these kids. And then he actually did.
So like a PMC, private military corporation.
But he just by himself, basically.
Oh, so he literally lone wolfed it.
Well, kinda.
Okay.
I mean, that's how people sell it to you anyway.
I want to see it. I mean, I'm interested in it. It sounds interesting. I should see it.
So here was my experience with it because I saw it. So.
Oh, you did?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm naturally super skeptical of like any sort of agenda type stuff. Right?
Okay, that's fair.
So I hear about this movie and I just hear that it's like really emotional or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of cool or sounds like a good movie.
I'm down for an emotional experience, yeah.
Right. And then I'm at work one day and one of my coworkers tells me that, yeah, they're trying to sabotage the movie. They're turning off the air. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
So that I did read.
Yes. So immediately I'm like, this is so ridiculous. What's the agenda here, right? So then I kind of give them that reaction. They're like, no, it's real. It's real. So then they send me some TikTok video of some guy talking about it. And they're like, see, I told you. And it's like, that's not proof.
Everybody does that. I have friends from all walks of life on like in real life and particularly on my Facebook or Meta or whatever they want you to call it. And I've seen both sides of this come down my feed, right? Yep. I've seen that this is propaganda. They hate gay people. They want you to think that this is a bigger deal than it is. And then I've seen the other side of they don't want you to know the truth. They're out to get your children. They're shutting the AC off in movie theaters. It's just that seems it seems insane to me. I don't want to say that it's not possible because anything's possible, right? We used to, I mean, nobody thought that the government would experiment on populations involving like diseases and stuff, and we know that they have, right? Because of declassified CIA documents. Like we know that the government does shady things. We know that people and groups do shady things, but it blows my mind that they're picking a movie to do this with.
So, I'm naturally like a very curious person, so I'm like I want to know more about this. And I think I'm going to go see this movie just because I want to see what the buzz is about.
I'm interested to hear your report on this.
Yes. So I do a little research because that video they sent me, the guy mentioned that it's a Christian film. And I'm like...
It's the film company, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe so.
Okay.
But at the time, all I knew is that this guy said it was a Christian film. And I'm like, what does that mean, though? Like, what does that mean it's a Christian film? Does that mean it's filled with, like, religious, messages? Does that just mean the director's religious, so someone's like, that's a Christian film?
Sure.
Like, what does that actually mean? And where is this coming from, right? Why is it being labeled a Christian film? Because if it's being labeled a Christian film, to me, that would make sense why people more on the left are like, I'm not going to see that movie, right?
Okay.
Where people on the right are more like, yeah, let's go see this movie.
I'm going to go see that fucking movie.
Generally speaking. So I ended up going to see the movie. And I brought my mother.
Okay.
And because she knows that I go to the movies all the time and she wants to go and whatever. So
is that something you're going to like humble brag about in every episode? I go to the movies a lot.
With my mother.
Spend a lot of time
yes.
at the movies.
With
I tend to go to the movies quite often.
With my I feel like this is important to explain why I went with my mom.
Sorry. I'm
Okay?
sorry. Keep going. Keep going.
She knows that I frequently do this hobby.
Okay.
And she said, "Hello, son. I would like to participate in your hobby."
Shut up, Mom.
Does that work?
So you bring your mom to the movies.
So I said, "Hey, I'm planning on seeing this movie. Would you like to go?" She said, "What is it?" I said, "It's this movie about child trafficking." And she's kind of like, But her love persevered, so she went. Okay? She goes we go see the movie, and so the movie itself was very meh. I mean,
yeah.
you could tell it was a lower budget film.
So let's start there from a film perspective.
Yes.
Ruling out all of the controversy and drama.
Completely, purely from a film perspective, it was, I would say, slightly below average.
Okay.
This movie has the worst CGI helicopter I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it's one of those shots where it's like, we should have just not put that in the movie.
They did show. I did see one scene on YouTube that seemed kind of badass.
Yeah.
Where this guy he says something along the lines of like, "God's children aren't for sale."
Yes.
Which is a sick delivery.
I'll
not
get to
gonna lie
that.
to you.
I'll get to that. The actor, his performance was incredible. Right?
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
He's really good in this movie. You could so here's where it kind of, because there's like movie perspective and there's like message perspective.
Okay.
Right. As a message, it was very well done.
Okay.
Super emotional.
That message being like human trafficking is bad. That's what you're going to. Okay.
Yes. The film side of it was kind of frustrating. Like, I won't give any specific spoilers, but there's a scene in the movie where they're trying to bust a guy.
Okay.
And this guy is like creepy, and he's like trying to get with this kid, and he's trying to stay undercover and stop this from happening without blowing his cover.
Okay.
It's like an amazing like tension moment in the movie.
Okay.
And then the bust happens. And they don't show him getting busted, like, directly. You don't get to see his face. You don't get to see him realizing that he's getting busted. And I understand that that's not the point of the movie, but speaking from that just movie perspective, super frustrating things like that aren't rewarding. Like,
Okay.
when you go to see this movie, you're not going to see it for cinema. You're going to see it for a message, and take that however you want. Like, if you're down for that, then yeah, go see it. If you're not down for that, then you probably shouldn't go see this
So
movie.
if I just want to see some bad guys get caught and put away, like that, this isn't that film?
No,
Or? Okay.
no, absolutely not. I wish it was, because then it sort of caters to both ideas.
It's interesting that people say that movies themselves are propaganda or are pushing a message.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting about this movie is, so I ended up doing research to figure out what, after I saw it, I was confused. I was like, there's nothing in that entire movie that mentions the government or conspiracy in any way whatsoever. The entire thing is like implied cartel type abductions, right? There's the government's behind. Like, the only thing that I remember that even remotely touches on that is when they cut the funding and tell them to come home because they can't find them, right? That's as close as this movie gets to being political, and that, in my opinion, is not political at all.
Yeah.
So after I finished the movie, I was super confused. I was like, what is going on? So I go and I do some research, and that's when I end up sort of figuring it out, or at least I think. Apparently, the real guy, like, that the movie's based on, is tied to some, like, QAnon conspiracy type stuff. On top of that, the main actor, apparently he's given, like, speeches at QAnon rallies where, wait for it, if I'm remembering this correctly, he says something along the lines of Hollywood is kidnapping children and they're harvesting their blood for some kind of chemical that the Hollywood elites
Okay.
are like injecting to make themselves look young. And I'm like, okay, now I get
So
it.
this is where the conspiracy
Yes.
is coming in. Okay, that
But-
makes sense.
But that being said, the movie itself, like I said, isn't political.
Right.
So if you're not seeing this movie based on that knowledge, I mean, you can do that if you want, but like this movie isn't pushing that agenda.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Films are going to be propaganda if you want them to be propaganda. That's what people need to understand here. I don't give a shit. That's what this ultimately comes down to. If your film is propaganda, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to watch it and I'm going to base my enjoyment on it, on my enjoyment of it. I'm not going to sit there and be like, well, that film really pushed a message and I did not like that. No, sirree, not one bit. And I think that, like, no. Did I enjoy the movie? Yes or no? That's what it comes down to.
So one thing that this movie did differently is during the credits, there's a little timer in the corner. And it says, like, special message in 2 minutes or something like that. It lets the credits play out so people can leave if they want.
Okay.
And then after the timer, Jim Caviezel, the actor, shows up. And it's just like actually him, he's not acting.
This has cringe written all
Allegedly.
over it, but here, let's go.
And he's talking about the actual problem.
Okay.
And at first, when he first pops up, I'm like, oh my God, here we go.
Here
Right?
we go.
Just like you're saying. And then he starts saying that people don't want you to see this movie.
Oh my God.
Right? And I'm like, oh God, here we go. But then he's like, if you can't afford to see this movie, we will give you free tickets. He's like, a QR code pops up and he's like, scan this QR code. If you can't afford it or you know someone that can't afford to see this movie, scan this code and you will get free tickets. If you'd like to donate free tickets so people can see this movie, you can scan this and you can go see. So like that's why I'm kind of torn on it because like they really want you to see this movie and the movie itself is not political.
Right. But it's
So-
the whole, everything in front and behind of it is kind of culty feeling to
Right.
it. Like,
So like you don't
they
quite
don't want
know
you to
what
see this.
Yeah, you don't know what you should feel,
Right.
right? It's really weird. So here's where the story gets interesting though. So I go home and the next day I'm getting in the shower and I'll usually put on like a YouTube video podcast whatever to listen to while I'm in the shower.
yeah.
And something pops up on my feed about that movie because I had looked it up to see trying to figure out what was going on.
There's another conspiracy for you. They're always listening. That's
Yeah.
why your ads are tailored to you.
I actually discovered something about that. I'll come back to that.
We'll talk about that in another episode.
Maybe. We'll see.
Who knows?
So I put this on and this guy starts talking and he's like talking about the movie and starts saying that, you know, the box office, it's killing it at the box office and all these people are reporting that the AC is being turned off and there's technical difficulties. And I'm in the shower, like washing my hair and I'm like, oh my God, right? And then he says, and in some cases, even the volume would be turned down. And I'm like, wait, what did he just say? And I'm like, thinking back, you know, because I brag so much about how much
Sure.
I go to the movies. Okay.
We know. We
Yeah.
know.
That movie was so quiet.
Tell me you're not about to say that this is...
So quiet.
Oh, here we go.
Just hear me. I'm not saying somebody tampered with it. This is all I'm saying. Of all the movies I go to, I have never experienced this. The movie was so quiet we had to go out and ask them to turn it up. Like, if I were there by myself, we were sitting in the back. If I were there by myself, I would have moved up to the front row. It was that quiet.
Is it possible? And again, anything is possible. Maybe it was tampered with, but is it possible that they just mixed the audio poorly? If it's multiple reports, it's similar to like, so Christopher Nolan has a bad habit of
Tenet.
muted dialogue,
Yeah.
right? Is it possible that they did the same thing?
I would say no, because they turned it up after we asked and it sounded fine.
Okay. Interesting.
So whether or not somebody did it on purpose, I don't know.
Another topic. Okay.
But it was turned down.
Okay.
Because that was my initial thought. Is this movie just mixed terribly? But then they turned it up and it sounded fine. So that was super weird. And then on top of that, the heaters on both of our seats didn't work. Like, you would press the button and normally they turn red and they stay red for like 20 minutes or whatever.
There's people that are going to listen to this who are going to be like, I fucking told you.
I know.
I fucking told you.
I'm not saying there's a conspiracy. I'm just saying, out of all the times that I've gone to these theaters, these two things happened that have never happened before, and it was super weird.
Oh
and
my
but
gosh.
it was subtle enough that I didn't think about it at the time until I heard someone else say that it happened to them, and then I was kind of like,
Fair enough.
that happened to me? Like, wait, what?
Okay.
So then after that, of course, I go on TikTok where everything is fake, and I look it up, and it's just video after video
yeah.
after video of these things that are happening. And it really is weird. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know. All I know is it is very weird. It could be one of those things where this stuff happens all the time, but nobody makes videos about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Depends. Well, I mean, because it's not worth talking about, right? But because it's a big thing right now, everybody and their mother, because everybody knows what gets views, right? So the folks who do push on like it's a conspiracy, it's they're out to get you, they're gonna lean into it real hard at that point. Like I was saying before, I think anything is propaganda if you want it to be propaganda. You could you could say Top Gun was propaganda because Navy recruitment numbers went through the roof after Top Gun came out. Any movie that glorifies the military could be considered propaganda because it's meant to show these heroes in a positive light. Like American Sniper does the same thing. A lot of these movies do the same thing where they try to portray the military in a positive light, and the big ones generate recruitment numbers. So, I mean, it goes both ways too, right? So the folks who are screaming and freaking out about The Sound of Freedom are the same folks who are screaming, well, not the same, but there's a whole other group of folks who are screaming and freaking out about Barbie. I don't know if you've read about this, but the topic of propaganda for The Sound of Freedom led me down this rabbit hole that apparently Barbie is left-wing woke propaganda as well. I don't know if you've read about this.
So I haven't seen it. I've seen the only thing I've seen about that was on Twitter. So I kind of ignored it.
So
my take just at face value is this movie is most likely not made for you and I.
right.
You
Who'd have
know?
thought?
Like, if I go into that movie, let's say, I mean, I assume that it's not propaganda, but let's say it's not, okay? If I go and see that movie myself, it's still going to feel like propaganda because it's targeted towards young girls.
Right.
And problems that young girls face. And it's not that their problems aren't valid or matter. It's just that those problems are different than problems that you have at that age, you know?
Yeah. My whole thought process behind it is so if you're going to call Barbie, the whole argument is that it's left-wing woke propaganda because it's about tearing down the patriarchy, right? It's about empowering women. You don't need men and fuck them. You can do it on your own. Here's the thing. There are thousands of pieces of media that talk about empowering girls, that talk about empowering women and encouraging that for young girls. You're going to see a movie about a plastic doll that is played with primarily by... Go ahead.
I am not going to generalize that.
Barbie dolls are played with by women mostly. If you go to the Barbie movie and you're like, I can't believe they're trying to empower women, what are you looking for? That's like going to Top Gun and going, I can't believe the United States won. What, you think we were going to fucking lose? You think somebody's going to write a movie about that? They did. It's called Red Dawn. We were still the good guys in that movie.
No, it would be like going to a Marvel movie and being like, they're teaching young boys violence.
Right! Right! I can't believe my son wants to grow up to be like Captain America and he's beating the shit out of these aliens. I just won't have that in my household. What the fuck are you doing here, bro? Like, it's know your audience, right? And the folks who scream about it being propaganda are the folks that, what are you doing there to begin with? It makes no sense to me.
Right.
Number one, I don't care. I don't care about Barbie. I don't care about The Sound of Freedom. From a propaganda standpoint, I don't give a shit. I have to be very clear about that. I don't give a shit if this is some message being pushed by QAnon. I don't give a shit if this is some message being pushed by Hollywood to destroy the patriarchy. You as an individual are responsible for your own decisions and are responsible for what you do with the information that you take in. Everybody has one of these in their pocket these days. And on here is all the information you could ever possibly hope to fathom in your lifetime. In the age of information, ignorance is not an excuse. So if you think something is propaganda and bad, and you still make a conscious decision to go see said propaganda and fund it, you are the problem. You are your own worst enemy. And I cannot make that point enough.
So did you not see those movies?
I
because you
haven't
think
seen
they're
either of
propaganda?
them, not because I think they're propaganda, but because I'm not interested in fucking Barbie dolls and low-budget movies about kidnapping kids. It's just not my fucking thing. So I haven't seen them. Does The Sound of Freedom seem interesting? A little bit. I'd probably sit down and watch that. I don't know if I'd pay full price for a ticket to go see something like that.
You don't have to. They'll give it to you for free.
Oh, here we go. Now I don't know if I'd spend $25 on a popcorn soda combo either to go watch that.
You know what's actually interesting about that is one of the like conspiracies is that whoever's trying to stop you from seeing it, that they're buying out all the tickets. So there's all these videos of people going into theaters and it says it's sold out online. There's nobody in there. Right? Which is, you see that and you're like, wow, that is really weird. But what if they have so many free tickets?
Right.
That they're just pouring them back in to boost their box office sales.
Well, and here's another thing. Think about this from a conspiracy standpoint, right? If you wanted a movie to fail and you wanted it to just disappear, would you fund it by purchasing every seat in the house? That's like somebody coming out going like, man, I really hate the Vikings. I hope they move that team. I'm going to buy every single ticket in that stadium for a whole season so nobody goes to see them. It's like, sweet, dude, our revenue just went through the roof.
Actually, that would actually be amazing.
I would love to see somebody do that for one game. Just some guy buy out every single ticket in the stadium, and it's just one guy on the 50-yard line. Woo! Like, just yelling the whole time. Funny story. So when I lived in Washington, I would go watch the Minnesota at the time had a professional lacrosse team called the Minnesota Swarm, and they would come to Everett, Washington, and play the Washington Stealth, their lacrosse team. And we would go watch these games, and I swear I was the only guy from Minnesota there. So it'd be me and a buddy go watching these games, and every time Minnesota would score, it would literally be dead silent in the arena, besides just me, just woo from the background, and everybody just kind of like looking up, like, who the hell is that guy? So it just made me think of that. Funny story. Completely off topic, but funny story. Long story short, movies are propaganda if you let them be propaganda. Unless it's like a direct to the veins, like unabashedly, it's right in front of you message where it's like, okay, this is definitely trying to push something here. But
you know what movie is propaganda?
That's a good idea. What is a movie that's propaganda? Let's see if we can figure one out.
Do you have one?
I would have to think a little bit on it.
The Last Jedi.
Please don't do this.
They're trying to tell you that Star Wars is still good.
Oh, here we go.
But it's
Here
not.
we go.
I want it to be.
We're not talking about this yet.
But it's not.
It's for another episode. Would you consider Passion of the Christ propaganda?
I never saw it.
I've seen it. It's not a bad film. It's not. It's a good movie. But it definitely is like, this is for... Here's the thing. You're going to find films for religions. And I don't give a shit what your religion is. I don't. I'm not religious, but I don't think that means that you shouldn't be. If you're Christian and you like movies about Christianity, do it, man. Dig it. I saw Passion of the Christ. Thought it was a decent film. was decent. I'm not religious, but I like that movie. If you are Jewish, Islamic, whatever, and you watch movies about specific faiths, I don't think that makes them propaganda. I think it makes it something that you're interested in.
Well, yeah,
right?
I think you should be able to watch those. Like in Sound of Freedom, that line you were talking about.
Yeah, God's children are for sale. That's a badass line.
Dude, that
I
gave
don't
me
care who
goosebumps.
you are, dude. Like, that's a badass line.
In the theater, that gave me goosebumps just because like the delivery that he gave was so convincing. You know,
Yeah. You're going to go see movies about things that you like. If you go and see Ford versus Ferrari and you're like, this is propaganda to make boys become race car drivers. No, dude, I just like fucking race cars. Like, that's what it is. That's all it is. There's nothing else to it. Everything is so... And I hate seeing it pour into films. I don't care what your religion is, what your stance on something is. For the most part, I just don't care.
So you don't think that there's any sort of hidden...
There's always going to be hidden messages. There's always going to be hidden agendas.
But according to you, that's only if you...
If you want them to be there. If you want them to work, then they'll work, right? Like, nothing...
But either they're there or they're not. You know?
Which,
whether or not you
fair.
let it affect you...
That's fair. Okay, that's a better way to see it. So, whether or not they affect you is up to you.
I saw this really hilarious meme on the internet. I really don't like memes most of the time, but this one made me laugh. It was something along the lines of... I can't remember how it was worded. It was a picture of Captain Marvel...
Oh, God.
with her hair all cut. And a picture of, I think it was Barbie. And the Barbie one was like, I can't remember how it was phrased, but it was basically implying like, this is what women want. Barbie. And then it was showing that the Captain Marvel one is like, this is generally for boys. It's a comic book superhero movie, but they're like cutting her hair and making her like woke.
Yeah.
But then they put the Barbie example right next to it, and it's like super feminine, and it just, I don't know, it just made me laugh.
Yeah, it's like, pick a side here. Like, which is it? Are they trying to make girls more like boys, or are they trying to empower girls? Like, who's it for?
Who are you targeting?
Right.
Like, so I do think that there is bits of that, but kind of
there's messages in everything.
Indirectly in the way that you were implying that.
Yeah.
It's what you take that home with you, or
people are going to pick apart literally everything you do. People go after anybody for everything. Does it, left, right, center, doesn't matter. Somebody's going to come for you for something, because the extreme ends of either side are going to nitpick you to death. Right? There's no right, there's no wrong. There's just what you believe and what you're convicted in. And everybody should be willing to grow. Everybody should be willing to admit when they're wrong. And everybody should be willing to be accepting and willing to see another point of view. That's how we grow as people, right? Like, that's how you do better as a person. When somebody proves you wrong and you go, oh yeah, I guess I was off base on that. Now,
people don't do that.
No, they don't. And that's kind of an unfortunate... I'm guilty of it just as much as the next guy, but I really do make an honest-to-God effort when somebody goes, hey, you screwed this up. You did this wrong, or you could do this better. I really try to, like, okay, what did I do wrong? Could I have done better? I'll use that going forward to be better. You have to... Relationships are the same thing. For every failed relationship, it's a good idea to take a step back and go, all right, it's very easy to sit there and go, this other person was the reason it didn't work. But if you take a step back and go, all right, what did I do wrong? And then address that and try to make you better going forward, that's how you grow as a person.
I've always felt like people fall too strictly into like sort of like pre-made characters, you know? Like, I've always lived by this sort of idea of, if you talk to someone, if you have one conversation with someone and you can tell who they voted for, don't listen to anything they're saying.
Yep.
Don't listen to anything. Because they have like this, like, you could, generally speaking, you could talk to someone who's all in on the Sound of Freedom conspiracies, and you could just know that they voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Whether you should vote for him or not vote for him, that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that people fall into like these pre-made
Yeah.
sets of beliefs and ideas.
They're so quick to like
yeah,
convey that what their
yeah.
beliefs are. The same thing goes like you were saying with The Sound of Freedom. If you meet somebody who's like, I love the way Barbie just totally empowers these girls and smashes the patriarchy, you can be like, oh yeah, so you're definitely
You hate
you're
Trump.
not a gun owner. That's all I'll say. Like,
Well, you know, like why can't you love Barbie and be a feminist but also own a gun?
right. There's no wrong answer to being who you are, right? Unless you're an actual piece of human shit. You beat kids, you kidnap kids, you're abusive to animals, you're abusive to people, you're just an asshole overall. There's nothing wrong with just being you. And we love to preach individuality.
But what if that's who you are?
Then you're an asshole, and that's really unfortunate. But we love to preach individuality, and we love to preach be unique. Everybody's different, but nobody wants to be different.
It's because we're all scared.
Everybody's scared to be, because different is alone.
No, because different is canceled.
On both sides. Yeah. And it goes both ways. It's so bizarre to watch how, like, supposedly cancel culture was originally just this very left-wing thing. You can't tell jokes about this. And then Bud Light comes out and does an ad with a trans person, and all of a sudden conservatives are like, well, guess what? I'm never fucking drinking again. And it's like cancel culture works both ways. Both ways. So
Yeah,
the people who
does.
scream about cancel culture canceled Bud Light.
Mm-hmm.
So I think leave shit alone, dude. Leave fucking people alone.
I mean, to be fair, I think there's a difference between boycotting a product versus canceling a person.
yeah. But when you boycott that product, there's people on the other end of that. There's jobs that are going to be lost because of that.
Well, yeah, but if you don't want their product, then...
Sure, I'm not saying you should
You
buy
know.
somebody's product because it's going to keep somebody employed.
But, like, if I don't like you as a person, I don't need to come after you.
But it comes down to like what you like, right? Like if Miller Lite came out tomorrow and they're like I drink Miller Lite, I'm gonna get roasted for that. I'm very well aware. I drink Miller Lite. It's like my light beer, my drinking beer. If they came out tomorrow and they're like, we fucking love the Green Bay Packers. We've never been in love with a team more than we've been in love with the Green Bay Packers. We're the official beer sponsor of the Green Bay Packers and no other football team, and we're gonna put up these anti-Vikings ads. I'm not gonna stop drinking Miller Lite. I don't give a fuck
Okay, but
what
now,
team they
what if
root
they
for.
what if they came out and they said, we support child trafficking?
Yeah, that's an actual impact.
Okay, now, just think, though, that every person has a different level of... a different threshold of where they draw the line.
That's fair.
And where you draw the line might be different from where he draws the line.
Yeah, that's
you know?
fair.
But ultimately, yeah, I agree.
What was our next topic? That seems like a good spot so we're done? We can just wrap it there? Okay. Well, this has honestly been insightful. And this one got a little bit more real, I think, than we intended. But that's good. Conversation is good. The problem these days is nobody can have conversation. I love having conversation. And I really enjoy making these episodes with you. These podcasts are fun.
This is a lot of fun.
This is a lot of fun. And with that being said, thank you wherever you are, wherever in the world you happen to be watching or listening. I am Joshua Rivers, the permanent guest, regardless of what the permanent host has to say. You can find us on social media at Binc Film on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. Are we on Instagram?
No.
We got banned?
We got banned.
Okay. You cannot find Binc Film
Why
on
did
Instagram.
we get banned? We
Talk about it on the next episode.
Okay,
We can
we'll
talk about
talk
that on
about
the
that
next
next
episode.
time. We are boycotting Instagram.
Oh, here we go.
Because they suck.
You can find Binc Film on YouTube at Binc Film. You can also find us on TikTok at Binc Film as well. You can find the lovely permanent host, Eric... I'm going to do it every time. Eric Gordon-Berg on all social media with the handles Eric Gordon-Berg. You can find our wonderful producer, Michael Darwinberg, on all socials with the handle Michael Darwinberg. And you can find me on TikTok with the handle Stop That Rivers, and soon to be on Instagram, hopefully with the same handle. I will get that updated and on the next episode as soon as possible. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next one. These are fun.
Stopping now.